Welcome to Gulf Islands Radio. My name is Lisa Schlabowska. I'm the owner and operator of a holistic centre on Salt Spring Island called Figs and Honey, and among other things, I am a mentor and motivator. I will be chatting to people for my show, Living a Passionate Life, and interviewing people from all walks of life to discover what it is to be working passionately, using one's gifts and natural talents to make a living. What is the difference and what does that look like? I'm on a quest to inspire and be inspired, as I believe that when we're living a soul-driven path, our lives change and life is a very different experience. Welcome to the show. Today I've got Chantel Wilson, author of Can I Be Me Without Losing You? To the show, talking about leading a passionate life. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Hi Chantel, welcome to our show.
Hi Lisa, thanks for having me.
I really felt like it would be a blessing for everyone to listen to your story. You have so much to offer to people who want to step out of their fear, step into their passions, and follow their soul journey and living and working and breathing, doing something that they really love and feel passionate about. You've got a very interesting story. I know that you were a career mother, you've always worked, you had a history in finance, a very interesting life. But you've mentioned to me that now you truly feel you are living a passionate life because you have this calling. And I would love to share with our listeners about the process that you went through relating to how you wrote this book, how you came to writing this book. What happened for you?
Well, it was 2009. It was 3 months after I have two children, and 3 months after my daughter, my youngest, left home, and I knew she had left home. I knew she'd taken up a condo in Victoria, and I knew she wasn't coming back. And I was going along. I was always a searcher and a seeker, so I read profusely. My father had many books on psychology and the meaning of life and reality. So I didn't realize I'd grown up surrounded by that, and so that had a huge influence on me. And I was a very good listener as a child. So a lot of my sisters were more argumentative, or older than me. I was the number 8 out of 9 girls.
Wow. So
I was a really good listener, as it turns out. And so as I grew up and I had my children and chose the roads that I chose to bring up my children as a mother and a wife, my seeking took me eventually to Eckhart Tolle. And I read his book, A New Earth. I tried to read his first book, and it didn't resonate with me as much, The Power of Now. But A New Earth really did resonate with me. I guess the timing was right. And then I was guided to watch the 10-part series that Oprah did with Eckhart Tolle on this book. And that's when my aha moment happened. I was sitting at home at a computer. She was doing a 10-part series with Eckhart. And while I was watching that, my husband walked into the doorway and asked me a question. And I don't remember the question, but I answered him with a voice that wasn't my own. And I became so fascinated with myself that I felt like I had gone somewhere else. I had gone inward to seek whose this voice was. So when I asked the question to myself, who is this voice? It was very clear to me, the dialogue that I could hear in my own head about what was happening to me in that moment. And the voice was so strong, and it said, "You are saying yes when you mean no." And I again questioned that. I felt my mind, attack that and to say, no, I don't, or do I? And really seek to see what the truth of that was. And this voice went on, and it was such clarity that before, when my husband would ask me a question, I would be there like that. I would be very attentive. I was a very attentive wife and mother, and I put everybody before myself. I thought that was my job. And this moment, I was completely taken to a different reality. My husband was still standing in the doorway. He didn't understand what I was doing or why I responded the way I did. But for the first time in my life, it had no effect on me. His reaction had no effect on me. And I was being spoken to in such a way that I was told that as a wife and a mother, I had become my mother. because that is who I watched growing up. And the reason that it never dawned on me, people say, oh, you don't want to be like your mother, or you are like your mother, but my personality is nothing like my mother. And I adored my mother, but she gave herself, all of herself, 100% to her family, and left nothing for her. And later in her life, that left her with some anger and resentment, and she died too young. And I really believe that we are all here to live our authentic lives, to be true to ourselves. So what also happened in this moment was the fear to be myself was completely taken away from me. So when I came out of what I consider it was almost like a different vortex or reality, I knew that my next job was to tell my husband that I had lied and manipulated to keep the peace, because I'm addicted to peace and I would do anything to get it. And I didn't know until that moment that I had been doing that. I thought that was my job. I thought that was what I was supposed to do as a wife and a mother. But I wasn't being authentic. And the voice told me that not only are you not helping yourself in your own evolution, but you are also stopping your partner from evolving, because you are not being authentic. You were sent here to be your authentic truth. And you have decided that it was safer to be this other way. But that is not who you are. So you are really stopping the evolution of yourself and actually those around you. So I immediately the next day decided, okay, I've got to sit my husband down and I've got to tell him what happened to me. Like, it was so clear, and it has never left me. And now we're going on 5 years. And that moment is as strong on me today as it was the day it happened. And I had to say to my husband, I've lied and manipulated to keep the peace. And he's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I actually didn't realize I was doing it until I was told in that moment yesterday. And they also told me I did it because I acted like my mother. That's what my mother did. It's what I learned to do. And I said, I'm not going to do that anymore, because that is not my authentic self. I have been carrying anger and resentment towards you, believing that you are making me be this way. But I've realized I don't have to be anything. I am who I am, and I don't have to fight to be me. I don't have to, when you respond to me with something and I'm not okay with it, I can then just say whatever I need to say, but I don't need the energy behind it to be anything but compassionate. Because this is the one thing they said to me that I think is missing in all of the work we're doing in the world today, in trying to heal the world. It is with compassion. So they said, you must do this with the utmost compassion for your husband, because he will not understand. He will not understand you, because you will start to behave in a way that is not what he is used to.
Well, of course. So it's completely alien. It's like, well, where did my wife go?
Exactly.
Who, I walk in, she says, hello, dear, would you like a nice cup of tea? I mean, if that's the kind of right wife, or whatever, just taking that into example.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was 5 years ago, and I know you've shown, in your book, I've read your book, it's very brave. You talk very openly about, I'd say, very typical roles that most women will play to keep their marriages together, to keep from any violent acts happening within a house towards their children, to keep things safe, because we want to keep our children. I think we're intuitively built to protect our children, and we'll do that at all costs.
Yep, I agree.
And I think through history, women have been very vulnerable, and just because we are. We're not as strong physically, and
I think the thing is that history has shown us that it wasn't safe for us to be 100% ourselves, in hundreds of years ago. But that is not what is true in our Western culture, certainly today. It's not in all cultures, but we can honestly say that, for speaking out of turn, 99% of the time we will not be killed for that. Right?
Unless you happen to be living in the Yemen right now. But anyway,
exactly. But in our Western culture, we're talking about the Western culture.
The most evolved, in theory, than anywhere in the world. We're talking about the northern.
And so you see, the way I was before, and my mother was, is that I sold my soul to protect what I thought I needed to do this to protect my family, my children, and myself. And it was like it's such an illusion. So it was a belief system. I mean, my father was an alcoholic. I adored him, but when he drank, he went unconscious, and then you couldn't trust him. And so to me, that sort of evolved in my consciousness that when men raise their voices or use their energy to gain control of something, even if they don't move their body, is their energy is as much. So my whole philosophy growing up and being married and being a mother was that I will do anything to prevent the wounded ego being woken up or stirred in another person. So I would, of course, manipulate to get that, to achieve that.
I know, it's a
all
game.
the time thinking that I was, of course, doing a good thing.
It's a great act.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I mean, I totally own and participated in that process.
Yeah.
And I almost defy. Most women do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are situations where men are doing this too.
Absolutely, that is very
this
true.
Isn't just
No, because actually, so my tool, how I stepped forward. So first of all, I told my husband that I'd lied, manipulated to keep the peace, and explained to him why. And so he said to me, in very simple terms, so I met you, I fell in love with you, we had children, you changed because you thought you needed to because of the way your mother was, and now you're telling me you've come back to the girl that I met. And I laughed because it was in some rinky-dink coffee shop. We were traveling on the motorcycle, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of it. And he's like, well, why would I have a problem with that? And I looked at him and I said, oh dear. I know, it doesn't seem like you'd have a problem, but I've become something that I'm not. So now you're going to see who I really am. I've been gone for a very long time.
Yeah, because you got married when you were...
When I was 19. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know that process very well. I got married at 18, and it's like, how do you know
who you are? Exactly.
When you've been so driven.
And yet you didn't even have the conscious awareness that you were doing any of this until you do. And so my biggest aha was that we all have free choice. But I never realized that within that free choice, there can be unconsciousness. And the unconsciousness in me making that free choice was that I was conditioned to believe that I had to sell my soul in order to keep everybody safe. And I never did. I just believed it, so I made it so. And so it created my reality. And I was just very fortunate that when I had this aha moment, that my husband loved me enough it took about 1.5 years for us to readjust to the new me.
Well, yeah, the one who said, no, I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
And you mentioned that quite a bit in the book. There's certainly some very revealing things in there.
Yeah,
I mean,
simple things that, he wanted me to do that now I don't want to do, but now he's like, well, why? What do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to do that? Or, and it was like, I was faced with, well, you don't love me then, and I just had this amazing ability to be fearless. I knew that I was, without a doubt, on the right track. And I believed that I love my life, I love my family, and I didn't want to give it up. I didn't want to go through a divorce. I didn't want to give it up. I just wanted to be me. So I didn't understand why I couldn't have that. I wanted it all. I wanted to be me. I wanted to keep my life and my family. I wanted it all, and I didn't see why I couldn't. And so I set out to find out if I could. And of course, I didn't know the outcome. I didn't know if my husband, would survive through me. Because as it turns out, I'm an extrovert. And I like to be front and center. And I like to, I'm a very social person. But if you had seen me before, I always took the back seat. I always allowed him to be, the extrovert. And of course, what we're doing in a relationship is we're all shuffling for position of control and power because we believe that if we don't do that, we might, my husband had a fear of losing me. So he had to be a certain way, he believed, in order to not lose me. I had to be a certain way in order to keep the peace and keep everybody safe. So we're both doing the same thing.
It's a dance.
It's a dance. And somehow we made this unconscious agreement to do it because of our conditioning. And I just came out of my conditioning in that moment where I was spoken to. I think what happened is that I was in a vortex, and I was being spoken to and taken down a path by my guides. And that if my husband hadn't have broken it, I'm not sure that I would have been able to have such a conscious awareness of what actually happened to me in that moment. But I have not slipped back an inch. And I think it's because my message is so strong. It's a message of unconditional love. You have to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, everything that you do stems from that lack of love. So your whole reaction to other people, your acceptance of yourself, when you accept yourself, nothing else really matters. You know, and you come from a loving place because you know now what it felt like and what it feels like. You can see all the layers and the illusions that you've been playing and other people are playing. So none of it makes sense to you. Like, you just look at drama now and it's just, it doesn't have the same engagement. You know, you don't react to it because
it's a story.
It's a story.
It's a drama. It takes us
and
away.
You know how deep it is in those people's lives. But the compassion I have is that I was running an unconscious thoughts in my choices. And that seems like it can't happen, because if you make a choice, you think it's conscious. But if you don't know that you've been conditioned to be this way, it's like you've lost yourself, and now I found myself, and I really like myself. And that's what I want my story to penetrate through reading my book and in my public speaking events and my coaching. I am trying to get people to see through the illusion of that which they are, because they've been conditioned to be that way, and to find out who they really are and just step into that without a fight, without a need to defend yourself. There is no need to defend yourself. With love and compassion. Compassion for others who don't understand that that's what's happening, because they don't have it for themselves yet. You know, I mean, when I was writing my book, there was so many moments of, it felt like I was just tapped in. When I go on stage, I don't prepare for my talks, because I feel like I am being guided to share this very strong message of unconditional love. And in my energy, it's also coming out, and not just in my words. You know, people can not understand something, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to get people to feel more and trust their feelings and bypass the mind, because it's the mind that divides us.
Well, that's right. And our thoughts
Yeah.
are so powerful in
They're so
creating
powerful.
our reality. And it's like this little spiral. But actually, you think it's complicated, but it's very really simple. Yeah.
Very simple. And you know, children are amazing to be around, because of course they see things that way already. And we, in our conditioning, have overcomplicated.
And fear.
Yeah, and fear. Fear of not being loved, fear of,
fear of protecting them.
Fear of, yes,
trying to
so many fears.
Watch them and keep an eye and all of those things. I think it's rather wonderful, because there's a lot of self-help books out there, or consciousness or spirituality books, that help people talk about finding themselves and loving themselves, for sure, which is wonderful, because we all are in the same movement. What I do like about your book is it does bring hope to marriages and relationships, that it doesn't necessarily need to lead to a separation and divorce.
Yeah.
If people can be open enough to love each other while people go through the changes in their life, to acknowledge there's a way of staying together and keeping family precious and keeping it together.
And what I would really like to get the message across is that if you are in a struggle with your relationship, this is a perfect time to be in the University of Relationships. Consider it a year worth of university, where you actually, one of the subtitles I wanted to put on the front of my book was, "We all come with baggage. Find someone who loves you enough to help you unpack."
Yeah.
And there is a detachment in that statement, because it doesn't mean that you have to stay together, that you're being forced to stay together, that you should stay together. I don't believe that. I believe use this as a platform, this difficult time where you don't understand each other. Try and take a step back from each other, because the truth is, every individual has two personalities. They communicate when they're in love, they communicate with that personality. And then when they're in fear, they communicate from that personality.
I totally resonate with that.
So that means that when you're in a relationship with a partner, there is 4 of you communicating.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people and a lot to sort through. But if you can say to each other, hey, we all come with baggage, we love each other, we just don't understand each other or agree with each other. Let's hold the love personality as a witness, and let's allow the fear personality to come out and converse with each other. but with the guidance of love, so that it's not something that, is a cast in stone sort of thing where you have a fight, but you do a dance. You almost do a dance as if,
It does take a reasonable amount of commitment, gentleness, and evolved behavior. And I guess in certain situations where there is physical abuse and a real lack of communication, it gets harder and harder, but not unsinkable. The power of energetic prayer is huge.
It is huge.
And setting an intention and inviting the universe for love and support, all the right people will show up. People like you who actually offers coaching to people to get through this. And finding their way through. I mean, because there is a way through.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very uncomfortable for you to. It was uncomfortable for me to accept that there was an unconsciousness running within me that was so strong, because I was convinced. I mean, my title is "Can I Be Me Without Using You?" I was convinced that if my husband would just be nice or don't shout or whatever, then I could be me. So I was waiting in the shadows, if you like, for permission or the feeling of safety to come out. I was wanting to come out. Clearly, there was a part of me that wanted to be me all the time, but I was waiting for permission. And my message is, don't wait for permission.
It's never going to happen, actually.
No.
And in fact, the biggest issues that we hear in all, counselling sessions, you speak to counsellors, is women will sit and men will sit and say, well, I just don't understand. I wish he would be more this. I wish he would be more that. And we don't want to take personal responsibility for our thing at all. We just want to put all the blame on our spouses.
Yes. The question is, why do you feel that if he changes, something will change in you?
Right.
Because that's what we do all the time. We just think if somebody would be nicer, if somebody would be this. Nobody has to do anything. My husband didn't have to go to counseling, after I had this aha moment. He didn't have to fix himself. He didn't have to be anything other than he is. I had no expectation of him to be any other than he was. It was me that was being something other than I was. And the way I did it was, from that day forward, so I spoke to him and told him that I'd been lying, manipulating. But the next thing I did was I almost had verbal diarrhea for a year, because everything I thought that came into my mind, I spoke about. So we had the situation where we were in the car and he asked me to set the GPS up for him. And I didn't really remember how to do it. And so he sort of shouted at me as if to say, I can't believe you don't know how to do it. Now this made me, I had this awareness now, so it made me realize, my conditioned self wants to defend that statement. And my new fearless me was just observing that feeling and saying, hey, wait a minute. If you came into my accounting office and I was running my accounting software, even though I've shown it to you, you wouldn't remember how to run it. So it's okay, because I don't run this GPS software very often. So it's okay, actually, that I don't remember. And you know what was fascinating? As I started to talk to him like that, what actually that moment was, he was in more fear than me, because he'd forgotten how to use the GPS in that moment. And of course, it appeared to me that I was the one that was getting shouted at for not remembering. But in actual fact, and you see, this is what's going on all the time. I found out through my process that my husband was twice as afraid, quite often, of me as I was of him. And yet my whole life had been set up to protect me from those elements, and it was very misguided.
Well, and that takes us to an interesting thing, actually, because we do mirror each other. So there's this, whoever we're with at any given time, and even our girlfriends, there's no accidents who we attract into our lives.
No.
And no accidents, because if we look at what bothers us in our friendships, in our parents, in our brothers, in our partners, there's a direct clue. What we're not accepting in ourselves and what we're not honoring.
Yeah.
So, often marriages can be saved because actually what we're doing is we're meeting somebody who has very similar needs of healing, insecurities and pain and fear and all that. And if we can just understand, there's a lot more compassion, because then you recognize that in the other human being.
Exactly.
And that's where, suddenly you just feel awfully sorry for everyone on the planet, because
Yeah.
everyone's walking around with almost identical issues in one way or another.
Yeah, and I mean, we all have wounds. There's no doubt about it. And
Yeah.
they can be minor, they can be major. But what we need to understand is that any time we defend ourselves, that is our wounded ego stepping up to the plate to try and rescue you. They actually think they're helping you through something. But if you find yourself defending, that is a clue to yourself to say, hey, I've just been triggered. My wounded ego is coming to my rescue, and it's not going to do what's best for me. So I need to tell it to take a step back so that I can be the one who's responding, not this little wounded ego that wants to attack because it's gone into fear by some kind of trigger. One of the things I learned about my husband was that I frightened him. My energy, my fear energy, frightened him twice as much as I was frightened, but I didn't know that. And so then I would, once I came through this aha moment, I would use, like a people whisperer, I would use my energy to ground the situation, because I'm now aware that I frightened him. So I would tone myself down. I would like really ground myself visually into the ground through my feet, and I would say, I love myself, I'm safe. And then magically, really magically, when you do that in communication, your energy is different. So the person that you're in communication with is very different. Yeah. They don't even know why. It doesn't have to go through their mind, but you have now settled them down, just like an animal, a whisperer.
Sure.
Same thing, right? You use your energy. And it's not a form of control. It's helping a person get out of fear. Because after this happened to me, my whole thing now in communication was, how can I help people come out and not go into fear? So even though we're talking about some scary topics in coaching, how can I help them stay away from fear? Because fear, once that engages in their mind, they will be responding from their wounded ego. And that's where my expertise is in coaching. I can tell when the ego has stepped up to the plate. So that means that I have triggered the ego. And sometimes in coaching, I will tip my energy into pull the ego out.
You want to see it.
Because I want to see it. And I want them to
awareness.
See it. Yeah, what I'm trying to do is bring awareness to them that it's there. Because they don't even know it's there. Because when an ego comes out, when you're in fear and you are triggered and you go into defense, you become unconscious. And honestly, there is 90 seconds in your body where adrenaline is pumping into your system, and nobody tells you this. And this is the real fear, is that now you think you're going into a panic attack, or now you think it's real because you can feel it. But in actual fact, you've just created it.
It's just a physical symptom of your thought.
Absolutely.
That's triggered your unconscious.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been through this process. We've all been through this process. And the trick is, be aware of the thought that took you to that trigger.
Absolutely.
So as you start feeling yourself stewing, go back a little bit and think, who was I just talking to? What was the thought that came into my head that triggered that feeling of fear or panic or anger? And then go, what I'd certainly do when I'm going on my walk is chant myself back with, I love you, it's safe, you are safe.
Yeah.
And within minutes, it takes you right back to
And that person that says, I love you, you are safe, that is the truth of who you are. Because as a spiritual being learning to be human, you are perfect in every way. There is nothing you actually need to do. What we are doing in this process of being human in this life, the time that you're in, is uncovering the truth of who you are. We're just taking layers off. We don't have to learn to be any different than we are. We just have to take off these layers that have been put on us over centuries of the lives that we've lived. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're doing. We're finding out who we really are.
Well, I got to say, it's absolutely fabulous chatting with you, Chantel. I mean, as always, it's interesting and insightful, and I can see that you've stepped into this second or third part of your life, if you like, with a huge gift to offer the world, and the more the merrier, because we are in a desperate need of self-love, of consciousness, of kindness, of unity, so that we can all coexist in a much more compassionate way, take away the barriers. And I would like to say to my listeners, if anyone's interested in contacting Chantel, They can email me at info@figsandhoney.com, or they can contact you directly. Do you have a
Yeah,
contact?
I have a website, chantelwilson.com.
And that is CHENTALWILSON. Or you can call the station too at Gulf Islands Radio.
My book is actually just being republished in the States. So it should be out in February in a revised edition, and that's an elongated version of my aha moment, because my first publisher didn't want me to delve into it as much as I wanted to. And so this is in this revised edition of Can I Be Me Without Losing You is much more in-depth about the aha moment that I went through in detail. And I'm currently writing a second book, and it's called In Search of Your True Est Self, because there's a lot of talk about, your true self. But I believe there's several, and there's two dominant ones. And I would like to, in this book, I am giving you examples and steps and although the steps are small, and the book is a small book, the journey might take you, 6 months to a year on each step, possibly, because you're working with things all the time. And my biggest suggestion is that you have to take action steps. So it takes a lot of courage and faith to take these action steps. But once you start taking those action steps, you're building a conscious awareness. And it's that awareness that is going to change your life. Because we are all born from the same seed. We all come from that oneness. So all of us can do whatever we want, however big or however small, or, you can take your life in whatever direction. Dream it as big as you want. And the only thing stopping you is the belief that you can't.
Totally agree with you. So Chantel Wilson, you're leading a passionate life, and thank you for coming to my show.
Thanks very much, Lisa.
Bye, Chantel.
Bye.
The preceding podcast was brought to you by Figs and Honey Organic Beauty Therapy, where radiant healthy skin is our passion, 100% naturally. For more information on our fine line of products or this show, please go to www.figsandhoney.com.